Hello, everyone. It's
Yes.
so good to see you all
Great
this
group.
evening. Thank you for thank you for joining us
Mhm.
on a Tuesday evening. I hope everything is going better for you guys than in some parts of the world. But everyone's got their own set of challenges, so I can certainly relate to that.
Absolutely. Yes, I know. And we're going to talk about, I know our topic for tonight is navigating those challenges amid what looks like, we put reentry in quotes because it's really every day is full of surprises, right, Brian? We just don't know. We
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
what's going to unfold. Right. And so this is a really timely topic. I'm grateful for that folks are here and participating tonight. And I'm eager to learn and to hear, what tips you all are using to keep your sanity and your routine as we enter into what, traditionally in the United States kind of grounds us as our academic year. So it's like August sort of signals to all of us that projects gear back up and the kids go back to school, university starts again, and
And it's
it's,
even broader than just
yeah.
academic because,
Hmm.
kind of a lot of church years,
Yes,
start in September. Everybody has a
that's
rally
right.
day or something like that.
Yep, that's
And
exactly right.
even the
Hmm.
business world, that I spent most of my life in was the same way.
Hmm.
July and August, it was difficult to get anything done because nobody was around.
So nobody
And
was
then in
around.
September, everything kicked back into gear again.
Wow. I was
So,
going to ask you that question if the business world sort of mirrored that academic
oh,
year.
absolutely.
Yeah. Hmm.
Absolutely. Um,
Hmm.
and conferences too, which is a subset of all of the above.
Right.
Kind of the main conference seasons are typically from mid-September to mid-November,
Hmm.
and then March through early June, kind of a
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Or
Right.
when trade shows, conferences, a lot of that kind of stuff tends to happen. So there's a lot of our economy, our
Hmm.
calendars, or what have you that are, oriented in a similar manner. So I'm really curious to see what reentry is looking like for everyone on the call,
Me
because
too.
it's uncertain, I think, for many of us. It's different for many of us. So,
Hmm.
I'd love to hear from folks as to what you're looking at. What is reentry looking like for you?
Yes, I would too. Absolutely. So I know we've got quite a few participants on. So yes, so any specific scenarios, questions, struggles, challenges, what are you looking forward to? What's causing you maybe some anxiety and stress? Yeah, I think Brian, that's a great starting point because the reality too is that this academic year, no matter each of those silos that you talked about, we're all also facing very unique challenges within each of those circles. And so there are some, of course, Venn diagram overlaps, but it's, and somebody said the other day on Facebook, every family right now, every family unit that has a school age child is in complete chaos right now. And
Yeah.
it's a different kind of chaos for everybody, because families are constructed much, every family is unique. And so, but it's, yeah, everybody is experiencing
And
really
some of
unique
it's still up in the
challenges.
air too.
Exactly. Yep, it is. That is. Yeah. So yes, I'm ready
So
to
anybody
dive
want to
in.
go first? Anybody want to chat about where they stand?
Mhm.
I can go first.
Hey, Patrice, how are you?
All right. After having fall down for the fifth time in this house today, I feel your pain, Brian. I'm in.
I've
Oh,
So just
got
have.
the heating pad on high behind me. You can't
Yeah,
see it, but
yeah, I just took off a heating pad so I could kind of get. It's hot here still. Um, so for me, it's
mhm.
interesting. This is the first time in 5 years that I haven't been in grad school. I started out getting my MDiv and finished that in 2017. And then I got an MFA and finished that in 2019.
wow,
Went
congratulations on
Way to
back,
both.
go.
yeah, I
Yes.
went back and got a STM, Sacred Theology, and had every intention of continuing on to get either a DMin or a PhD or whatever, but just didn't turn in applications this past fall. and I'm glad I didn't, because I don't know that I would have been able to continue.
Mm.
So much has happened, but then the question becomes, now what? Because I didn't have like a post student plan. So my greatest anxiety is just trying to figure me out and
Mm.
how to be a writer again. You know, I went to a secular MFA program, because the only non-secular one is really at Seattle Pacific, but
Mm-hmm.
just having to figure out how to be a writer that's called by God, which was different from the person I was before seminary. Before seminary, I was just a writer trying to be a playwright in New York, you know, trying to do those things. And I didn't have a spiritual component. I just wanted to write and be published. But I've been struggling with that since the beginning, since 2014, when I started down this pathway. It's not like, oh, God called me to be a pastor has a defined pathway, but writing, especially in a Black church context, right? So um, it's just been real interesting that I haven't yet found my voice in that. So that's my struggle.
Hmm.
Mm.
Where did you do your studies?
I went to Wesley Theological Seminary.
Where, I'm sorry?
Wesley here in
Mhm.
DC.
Oh, okay.
And then I went to Goddard College, which, you know, is the original low res program. And then I went to Drew for
Mhm.
my STM.
Okay. That's probably
So
where we first met. Did you attend the Publishing in Color conference there?
actually, we first met at Princeton. That's the first time.
Oh, did you really? Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
was at that conference. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
good for you.
yeah. So, and that definitely helped, but still trying to figure out, what do I write about? And then things keep changing. I mean, with Black Lives Matter and then COVID-19, I did write a COVID-19 play, which is actually a one-woman show, but and was going to produce that in the summer here, but they shut down Fringe Festival. So kind of, you know, saying, what do I do now? You know, do I write memoir? Do I do poetry? Do I do whatever?
Mm.
So yeah.
Hey,
Wow.
Patrice,
Patrice. Oh, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
did you go to the Frederick Buechner conference?
At Princeton, yeah.
I think I might have heard you read there. Did you do a reading?
I don't know if I was that brave. I did, you know, I did do a poem. If you were in the class with Enuma, is that how I pronounce her name? She did
It
the,
is. It's a
Enuma
Numa.
Kuro.
yeah, the I
Mhm.
am. That's the only time I might have been brave enough to read, because
Uh,
poetry, yeah, I think I read there, but I was pretty in awe of all of the people there. So I don't know if I read, but I might have, you know, I might have, yeah.
It's great. And Anuma is such a gifted teacher.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, she's
yeah.
incredible. Patrice, well, first of all, I think Brian is right. I mean, congratulations on
Thank you.
finishing all these degrees, and what a beautiful trajectory that has really set you in a position where you are poised now to share your voice. You were before, but it's like with each increment, you've adapted and added a new set of tools to your toolbox
Mhm.
for such a time as this.
Mhm.
I mean, I was really energized when you were going through all the various studies that you've had and what you have tried, your playwright work in New York, what you're thinking about right now, but also I hear the anxiety and the challenge. And what first comes to mind for me is maybe, and this is maybe an invitation for all of us, Brian, I'm really curious what you think about this too, is to think about what are some short-term, timely pieces that can be written and published now for such a time as this,
Mhm.
either, you know, ideas and threads from your COVID-19 play, your experience as a BIPOC person living in pandemic America, Black Lives Matter movement, 2020. I mean, my goodness, there you have such an important, essential voice that I'm hopeful. I feel a sense of urgency for you in that there's a timeliness and there's an urgency, and that's a wonderful intersection to be in this moment. So how could we all sort of figure out together, what are some of the ways in which maybe some short-term pieces and goals for you to get your voice out there as a writer in what I would call an extension ministry of sorts, or a parachurch ministry. So not necessarily in the parish per se, but sometimes, we say that the writing community is its own parish, right? It's its own extension of the church. And so I'm really excited for you. I think this is actually a great opportunity for you, and providential perhaps that you aren't enrolled in a program right now, that you've wrapped up those degrees and you're ready to put all this together and take your voice out into the world in a unique way that is timely for this moment in 2020 that perhaps wasn't there in 2019 or 2018 or 2010, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Oh, Patrice, I'm so excited. And I'm eager to hear what others think about some opportunities and ideas. Brian, your thoughts too on that?
Well, there's this marketing guru that I've quoted many, many times. His name is Mark Schaefer. And he's got a blog that, basically I follow. He puts out an email with his blog posts pretty much every day. And sometimes he's got guest writers, but a lot of times it's stuff that he's written. And he's written some really good stuff about coping with a pandemic. And so I reposted those. And I'll try to find, a couple of them again and repost them. But, just to try to remember a couple of the key things that he said that I think are applicable for everyone. One is to think about Maslow's triangle. I'm sure all of you are familiar with that whole hierarchy of needs. That's a modeling of human behavior. And at the very low level are very subsistence, kinds of things, survival kinds of things. And then there's multiple layers till you get to the top, which is self-actualization or, whatever. Everyone's kind of sunk down, into, what they care about, what's at top of mind, what are the things that they have to deal with, however high, so to speak, they were at in that model, they've gone lower, right? And are caring more about more short-term, more tactical, more pragmatic, less esoteric, less abstract, less theoretical kinds of things. So for what it's worth, whatever we're communicating to anyone, I think has to be with that in mind. So that's one train of thought. Another is just, for lack of a better word, I'd say agility. And, agility basically means to be able to adapt quickly, right? Well, how do you adapt quickly? Well, a key part of that is listening.
Right.
Listening to your audience, listening to what's going on. And as you mentioned, Dana, it's like, certainly, the pandemic was the big issue for a while. And now on top of that, the whole, race, right, has become more at the forefront than it has been, I think, since the civil rights era in the 60s, as far, at least as far as I can tell. And so, from a publishing industry perspective, all of the publishing houses are looking with greater intensity for writers of color, right? So, being able to connect with them, being able to demonstrate to them, that you've got something to say that people are interested in. Time hasn't been riper, at least in the, recent history, as far as I can tell, on any of that. So whether it's an acquisitions editor or a literary agent or magazines, everyone that I've talked to is hungry for, writers of color voices to speak out.
Mhm.
So I don't know. That's just a couple of, off the top of my head kinds of thoughts.
I agree. I totally agree. I see the media outlets that I read being much more intentional about their content from, especially from women of color. And I think the Vice President Joe Biden's announcement today about his running mate, Kamala Harris, will certainly also bring an opportunity for people to give a perspective, if nothing else, from a church point of view, from a religious and spiritual point of view, on his running mate. I mean, it's Sojourners comes to mind, Christian Century comes to mind, Huffington Post, NPR. And Patrice, I don't know how interested you are in writing, short pieces for those outlets, but I agree with Brian that editors, I think, are being much more intentional about the content that they acquire and that they are publishing to their consumers, which I personally am very grateful for. And so I support you 100% and really, digging in and seeing where your voice can be shared and heard, because you have a lot to say and you've learned a lot. And we need to hear and benefit from your education that you've been working on for the past 5 years, in addition to your life experience. So I'm really excited.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrice. Thanks. And let us know, I don't know if I can be in help in any way. I think we'll make sure that everybody has my contact information at the end, but, connecting you with editors, et cetera. So.
I have a few pieces that I wrote and put it on Medium, but I definitely am not knowing the business side of that. So I've kind of been trying to figure that out, but definitely have a couple of shorter pieces, 2 essays. Yeah, and I have quite a few COVID-19 essays that I wrote at Drew. So I'll pull those out and see if I have something in there. And all of it is, yeah, thank you, because I forget, because when you're in grad school, you just write so much and you just forget that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But I think people are really eager to hear theological voices right now too, because we realize now that theology was a stronger theme of the 2016 election than we realized. Hindsight's always 2020, and here we are in 2020. And so I think that the time is right to like, I'll say metaphorically, dust off the grad school papers and really see how timely they are, even from a couple of years back. So that's great. That's great. Thank you, Patrice.
Thank you.
I don't know, Patrice, if you're a member of the Facebook group of former conference attendees.
Mm-mm.
There's 2 different ones. There's a Writing for Your Life former conference attendees, and there's a Publishing in Color conference attendees. So if you have to ask to join, but if you want to ask to join, let me know.
Okay.
But Lisa Creighton, who has attended and spoken at those, just posted something today about freelance writing opportunities.
Okay.
And some places to search for those kinds of things. So you might look at that and then do some searches and figure out who to pitch to.
Mm-hmm.
What you've written.
Mm-hmm.
Because there may be some significant interest out there.
Yeah, I agree. Those groups, that's a great resource. Those sort of internal groups where folks are trading information online. That's great. That's a good reminder for all of us that we have a really thriving writing community through Writing for Your Life, and we need to remember to reach out to our siblings, so to speak, and ask for help and see what's out there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrice.
So how about anybody else? What other kinds of things are going on, that you guys are working on that are part of your reentry plan for the fall?
Hey, I can share.
Great.
Hi, Sarah. How you
Hi.
doing?
Doing okay. I'm sad to hear about your back.
Well, what can I say? Never,
Yeah.
never a dull moment. As you well know, physical infirmities abound, right?
I mean, back injuries can be really awful. So, hope it feels better soon. I'm doing okay. I think that for me, the reentry thing is happening in a different way. That's not based on COVID, which is a weird feeling because I've already kind of had this other situation. I've been on SSDI, recovering from uh, weird work stress that was like done on purpose to me, and kind of like on a trauma level. And I've been recovering for like 7 or 8 years now. But I've been on SSDI just for about 4 years, maybe 5. And so I'm hoping to start working again, and I have to find a new place to live. So I'm kind of like doing all these changes, but I have a different circumstance than other people who are kind of facing, like different kind of like threats to stability and stuff, people losing housing and stuff like that. But I feel hopeful in some ways and a little bit worried sometimes. And I'm kind of starting over in terms of looking for like publishing opportunities, and was really ready to publish about 8 years ago when I finished my MFA, and it got delayed because of everything that went wrong. And I'm thankful I got to go to social work school, and I've like written all these ebooks and stuff since then. But I think I have this feeling of a delay, and where I've e-published, I did Facebook advertising, I didn't get book sales yet, but I got a lot of website visits, so that's a hopeful thing. But it still gives me the feeling that I'm like gonna build an audience from scratch when I've been writing for 20 years, and I had audiences a long time ago, like poetry slam scenes and like friends and Facebook and all this stuff. So it's just weird. I sometimes feel kind of mad and frustrated. I feel like I'm starting over, and sometimes I feel like other people have like managed my case, so it hasn't been in my hands, it's in other people's hands, and yet I still feel responsible. And it's just kind of a weird thing, but I'm thankful. I think I'm learning to kind of trust God and take things day by day in a way that I haven't before. I've relied very much on kind of doing what I'm supposed to and taking the responsibilities myself, which isn't that bad, but I think I haven't had the same faith that some other people have who have like made decisions, without relying on themselves and trusted that they would know what to do next and stuff. So.
Wow.
When you said going back to work, what is work? I don't remember what your vocation is.
Well, I taught high school for a year, but was going to try to get a job in a mental hospital as like a behavior assistant, but I got an MSW, so it's like a higher level of responsibility than I was really imagining. And so I got my license, and I'm kind of all set to start working, and I've applied for a couple jobs, but sometimes I don't feel quite capable of the full-time responsibilities yet. Even if it's like through Zoom or in person, I'm willing to go to like hospital in person and take the COVID risk of being with patients and stuff like that. But in terms of my own endurance, it's hard to know what I'm exactly ready for, and whether I can, really like afford a normal apartment, or if I need to do like supportive housing plus part-time work. And in the meantime, I have all these books. I'm like, man, if I could get an income from the books, it seems like they're good enough books, and I don't know what's supposed to happen. And I feel like I've done what I'm supposed to usually, and I still don't know what to do. So.
Wow. I have one initial thought, and then I have a question for Brian and Sarah. I don't think that we have met face to face, at least on this discussion, or maybe last time we did, or a few months ago. But You bring up a really good point, and thank you for sharing your story, because I'm really grateful that you said it. I feel like I'm starting over. And you have a very specific reason for that and a very specific case for saying that statement. And I think you're right. And in some ways, I also feel like we're all kind of starting over. Like it feels like a lot of momentum has been lost. And I feel deep empathy for my friends and our Writing for Life community folks who've released a book between March and now, because having to release a book during a pandemic is not an easy feat at all, because it just feels like Brian was saying, there's so much of back to basics that a lot of the marketing momentum, the higher like top level self-actualization, books on integration and spirituality, it's just like, evaporated. So I really appreciate that you brought up that point and named that, not only for yourself, but just your doing that gave us permission to name that for ourselves as well. So thank you for that. And then, because Brian is our perpetual optimist, I'm really curious, Brian, what you think of when Sarah describes like losing this momentum and starting over. Brian, you're one of our marketing gurus. Like how do we get back to the basics of the Maslow's, pyramid of marketing, if you will, hierarchy of marketing? Where do we start when we have this feeling?
Well, I mean, Dana, you're painting too rosy of a picture of my ability to provide insights to such a complex issue, and I'm not even a writer, so I mean, but I'll still give you my 2 cents worth.
Please do, because it's always useful. It is.
I mean, for one thing, everyone's at some level having to reinvent themselves.
Yeah.
Right, and I know I've had to do that several times in my life. Other people, most everyone, right, has had to do that in some way, shape, or form. So it's almost like starting over for everyone. So, I mean, the first thing I would say is, Sarah or anyone is like, don't feel like you're alone.
Right.
Because everybody else, or at least a lot of folks, right, are having to do something similar in one way, shape, or form. But back to your question, Dana, about, kind of Maslow's, I started reading a book by a really highly acclaimed spiritual writer, Christian writer, who's now in his 80s, and I'd never read his books before. So I started reading them, and very, intelligent, very thoughtful. I love it, but it's way too wordy. It's way too abstract for today's environment. So if I have advice about, kind of writing for today versus writing for yesterday, it's be succinct, short, to the point. Don't fluff around, because everybody's attention span is really short. They kind of want help immediately. I mean, if they're trying to deal with whatever. So, I mean, the Maslow's thing, it's like, the higher levels are more abstract and more meaning of life kinds of things. And the lower levels are much more practical, dealing with today's issues. So, whatever a given person's area of specialization is, for those of you that have participated in the business of being a spiritual writer, that I've beat you over the head about being very narrow, very specific, very clear about what is the area that you want to help people with. What do you want to be known for? What do you want to be the go-to person for? And so if you've got that well articulated and well identified, then I would say just be really practical. Bullet list advice in a Facebook post, or, there was this one kind of genre that was really popular several years ago that were, the 5 best ways to do this, or the top 7 reasons for that. Well, I wouldn't necessarily word it that way now, but I mean, the same kind of boom, boom, boom practicality, I think, is going to get the most attention and be the most useful for people.
Wow, that's actually a reminder. I think that's a great reminder, and I hadn't even thought about being more succinct and less abstract, and that being an accessible way to help others, which is first and foremost, but also market our work. Like, Sarah's got ebooks. And so Sarah sifting through the ebooks to figure out what are the pull quotes?
Mm-hmm.
What are the little tiny pieces of advice that you could pull from your ebooks that, just like Brian said, then you make a bullet point list that is, and I don't know the specific subjects of your ebooks, but, 5 ways for coping with X, or, whatever it is, 5 pieces of wisdom on whatever your niche is.
It's mostly,
Brian, that's brilliant.
mostly humorous poetry. So it's,
Okay.
and it's Christian themed too. And I got to say, that's the other component I think that's on my mind, is sometimes I feel kind of persecuted. I feel like everyone's mad at evangelicals. So for me to share my faith with the audience I've reached out to, which is kind of more outside the church sometimes, I feel like everyone's mad at me. And like that they kind of sometimes have reasons to be mad at, like people that I'm part of. We have like certain ways, but that kind of hurts me sometimes, and it makes me feel just a little bit of despair. But mostly I still feel hopeful. So.
But what's interesting about what you said, I hear the despair and I hear that the sadness, but I also hear that there are lots of evangelical Christian readers out there who need your content and material. And I think part of Brian's writing workshops, the business of being a spiritual writer, talks about finding those niche markets, which you've probably already done too. But if there's one space that feels not so welcoming right now, there might be another space where people are eager and like yearning to hear the wisdom from your ebooks. And so that might be an interesting endeavor too. Like because part of our theme for tonight is being super practical. So, I'm thinking, okay, Brian just gave us a great homework assignment of how would we distill, one piece from our ebooks, whether it's poetry or nonfiction or fiction. How would we distill it into a very short Facebook post with 5 bullet points, and whom would we target with a Facebook ad, right? With those 5 bullet points, because Brian, and he's right, knows that, sponsored posts in Facebook actually do very, very well. And the ROI is quite good. Mm-hmm. And so those are 2 pieces of really practical homework if we're keeping it like brass tacks tonight. So yeah, Brian, what do you think about in terms of Sarah's response of, some communities right now might not be as welcoming to her content?
Well, that's true for everyone.
Yeah, that's true.
But, I think at the end of the day, we all have to be true to ourselves.
Yes, I agree.
Right? And we can't pretend to be someone we're not.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever it is that we all say, some people are going to like it and some people are not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And, I'd suggest focusing on you, focusing on who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And your key beliefs, your key messages, and damn the torpedoes. Because no matter what you say, there's going to be torpedoes coming at you.
Yeah.
But, who cares?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow, listen to Brian. Don't listen to me. I'm an Enneagram too. So Brian, that's very, I needed to hear that, Brian.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
One thing I've noticed is, being a writer, requires some amount of thick skin.
It does.
True.
Mm-hmm.
There's one, and it's funny how this plays out, because if I think of like the more well-known authors who I work with, there are some who are out there, right? And they're not afraid to have a Twitter argument with whoever,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there are others who, if they say something controversial and they start getting criticized, they will back off immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, for instance, there's a new interview series that we just launched this week called Faith, Hope, and Love During an Election.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when I said something to my wife when I very first thought of this idea, she said, you're going to do that, you know? He thought it was kind of risky, you know what I mean, to kind of, you know, deal with, you know, that kind of controversial subject. And so I thought about it more, and, you know, I'm trying to cast it, you know, in a light of, you know, compassionate Christianity, right? You know, as the website says, you know, not things that are polarizing, but try to communicate to each other in a civil and a thoughtful and a caring and a Christian kind of a way. So one of the authors, you know, well-known author who I approached about, would you like to do an interview for this? They told me the story of how, you know, I think it was the 2016 election, that they had said something, posted something that they didn't think was really all that controversial, and they got beat up about it. And so they back off now. You know, whereas other, you know, many of my writer friends are not afraid to mix it up.
Yeah.
And I'm personally not one that likes to argue online. You know what I mean? I just, that to me is a sinkhole, potential black hole of time. And it just, so I don't mind saying, you know, at least on some of the things I do, you know, I won't mind saying something controversial, but I'm not going to like get into a, pissing contest, you know, about it. Yeah. But, you know, I think in the space that we play in, you know, taking a stand, and not being afraid of that, I think will benefit people more, even if it alienates some people. You know, I just announced this the first ever children's book conference that I've ever done is coming up in September, Christian children's books. And it's going to be, you know, online only. One of the headliners for that conference about 2 weeks ago, about the same time that I announced the conference, and he told me in advance that he was going to be basically coming out as gay. And he's one of the headliners of the conference. And, you know, he asked me, Brian, I wanted to let you know this is what's going to happen. You know, if you don't want me to appear at your conference, you know, that's perfectly fine. I'll back out, and I'll, you know, not say that you told me to or anything like that, you know. And I told him, I said, you're more than welcome. I'm glad that you're going to be there. You know, I wouldn't change a thing in a minute. So I'm making a statement, you know, that within the broader Christian context, there are going to be some people who, there already were, you know, after that all happened, you know, there were some people that would write me and say, well, you're going to, you know, dismiss him or whatever. And I didn't say hell no, but I said hell no.
That's great.
So anyway, you know, we all have to make these choices about, you know, and, you know, quite frankly, you know, I've got gray hair, as you know. Most of my life, you could play the middle of ground better, you know, and being moderate, and a bridge builder and things like that. And that's becoming less and less possible, more and more difficult, you know, than I think it was when I was younger.
Yeah, that's very well said. Yeah, I think you're right. And I'm always very proud of the Writing for Your Life content and what you share online. And you're right, Brian. I mean, this is an invitation, you know, going back to Patrice's initial thoughts and comments too, to really to live into our callings, and to be ourselves. And so Sarah, I really hear that, Brian, and I hear that encouragement for Sarah too, for all of us.
Yeah.
So
thanks. I just want to say that I think I can also I feel kind of encouraged and reminded to to focus on what I can offer other people, how I can help them, like you said, and not be like, okay, readers out there, I need to pay the rent, you know, or it was like, what, my crisis or whatever. So I appreciate it. I can do that. I can keep on going with that. So.
And can I share something with Sarah? So I'm not sure what you mean by evangelical, but two thoughts come to mind. Part of the issue with being African American and Christian right now is I am not known for controversial content. I rarely pick up those messages in my writing. And I got burned out quickly in my spiritual space and needed to go back to the basics of my faith. And ironically, the thing that my friends and I who are still are burned out together, we all ended up going back to the same, well, not going back to, but picking up on some of the names in evangelical movement, like Tony Evans, like we went to those people to just be Christians again. So I would say that if you're able to speak about the love of Christ, the message of Christ in a way that's healing and helpful, and that's just as important as taking up the message of justice and all of that. And I'm saying that as a Black woman. And to the point where right now my pastor has a call to do the justice stuff, and I'm always having to kind of supplement his sermons with more just Jesus loves me sermons. So I think when you're fighting and fighting and fighting and constantly out there in the metaphorical battlefield of justice, you do need to come back. And I think that's why Howard Thurman's work is so important, because he gave us a body of work that we can come back to time and time again for nurturing. And so that voice is always going to be important. And I'm actually a part of Compel, which is led by Lisa Turkis, and I am literally a fish out of water with them. I am like not married, never had kids, all of that. And while I do struggle a lot with finding my place in that group, they have been encouraging with just, being a writer in general. But, and I just ended up there because I just was trying to figure out how to teach people to write who are not MFA graduates. And that's why I ended up in their space. Someone invited me to it. But still having someone just says Jesus loves you is just as important. So I think if you're not trying to argue, but just being yourself, that's well appreciated. Because sometimes when we're fighting, we forget that God loves all of us.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I think that will also make it easier to not affiliate too much if there are problems, like branding and political association that maybe I should separate from. So thank you so much.
Yes. Yeah, agreed. Thank you. Thank you both. Gosh, these are really timely reminders. Even though we're at basics, I feel like there are ways that we are integrating the self-actualization and the more abstract theological pieces of this too, and how to bring it back to the foundation at the same time. So, wow. Thank you.
So
and Brian, go ahead.
Talking, I looked through Mark Schaefer's blog.
Great.
And in the chat room, I posted links to 5 different articles that he wrote, some of which have to do with kind of dealing with consumer behavior during the pandemic and, things like that. So, if you want, just copy those links and paste them, into your own Word document or something like that, so you can look them up later. But those are just some of the articles that he had written recently that I thought to be particularly useful.
Thank you so much. I feel like I can't highlight them for some reason. The cursor not working.
Let's see. I had.
Well, you know what I can do? I'll take those and post them to the page, the Second Tuesdays page.
Great.
On the Writing for Your Life website.
Okay. I just figured out I can take a tiny little screenshot, but I appreciate that too. If you post them, I think I got them now. I got the link. So thanks.
Yes. Thank you so much, Brian.
Yeah. Within the resources section on the Writing for Your Life website, there's a page that's Second Tuesdays Writer Discussion Group. And I'll post them there.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank y'all for sharing, Sarah and Patrice. Thank you. Any other thoughts? And I'm really curious about practical things too. Like Brian gave us some really good practical advice. We're going to read the articles. I'm a teacher, so I'm always into homework. I'm like, what's my homework? What can I do tomorrow when I wake up? So I always make myself a list. But anything super practical that anybody's using right now as they look at re-entering the academic year or re-entering, where do I pitch to, or marketing, or any hacks or tips or tools that anybody else is using right now that they're finding helpful or that they're looking for?
I'm using Trello. I might be late to that game, but I love Trello as a project management. It's been helpful. Last week, I finally sat down and said, okay, let me organize my life since it's not organized around this class or that class. Because, as a student, you kind of just have your folders. But now I'm like, what? So Trello, which is free, and it's allowing me to kind of do a visual of all of the different things like social media posts. I need to start my blog back up. What contests can I look at? And now after talking here, what places can I look to submit? And stop being so timid about that. But yeah, so Trello has been a good tool. And another tool I haven't tested out yet, but I heard about, it's called Focus Mates, where you can actually schedule time with another person halfway around the world just to stay focused in your writing. And in the package, the paid one is only $5.99 a month for unlimited sessions, but even the free one, you get, I think, 3 sessions per week. So the app just matches you with someone who wants to write at the same time as you, and you do a Zoom like session. So you have to look at each other and make sure so yeah, it's a new thing. I haven't looked at it much, but just heard about it. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Especially for those of us who are not part of a writing group. But yeah, that was the best thing ever. Yeah.
That's right. Yes, I agree. Because I sat down this afternoon I took last week off to do actually some research work and not writing work. And then I sat down to write some curriculum that's due at the end of August. And Patrice, I was like, oh, I cannot focus. I just want to go sit and look at TikTok all day.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it. I can't do this. So I just looked up Trello. I can put the link in the chat too. And then Focus Mates was the other one, right?
Yeah.
This is great. I love this. And Brian, I forget, do you use Asana? Is that how you organize your projects?
No.
You don't have a particular, okay.
No, I don't use that. But, back to Trello, I've heard other people mention that as a productivity tool that's been useful for them too.
Okay, great. And there's Focus Mate.
I grew up in a world where, none of that stuff existed. So I began building my own tools, within the tools that existed. So I pretty much use Word documents or spreadsheets or my calendar for an email for just about everything. And so I have a whole plethora of, all of those things on Google Drive, so that they're backed up and I can access them from anywhere and share them with other people if I need to. But in terms of organizing myself, I have different Word documents that, a list of all my writing conference plans, a list of my, like this interview series that I was just mentioning that we're going to be starting, Faith Open Up. There's a whole list of about, 60 people that are, kind of under consideration for me to invite to do that kind of thing. And Jennifer Grant is going to be doing some of the interviews too.
Great.
So the two of us are sharing the document to be able to, work on together. So if I've got a particular project or even a list of projects, I create a Word document and a folder hierarchy, to organize that stuff. And so I don't know if it's best or not, but you know, it works really well for me, and I don't have to learn new tools.
That's very wise. Yes, yes.
Remember, anybody ever use Evernote?
Oh yeah, yes.
You know, that was real
I
popular
remember
for
Evernote. Mm-hmm.
a long time, and you know, there were a lot of people that swore by it. Oh, you know, now I never heard of it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm
Yeah.
sure there's still some people that use it, and that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it's kind of like I looked at it, and it was kind of like just a repository to store links or store notes or whatever. It's like, well, I've got Word documents that do that. Why do I need, you know, to learn a new tool and log in as another place or whatever?
Yes, no, I agree. Yeah, it's
Um,
that there's something to be said for the toolbox that is already built into Google, which most of us use Gmail, even if it's behind our website wall, so to speak. But yes, yeah, agreed. And you're really good. You've taught me, Brian, about calendaring. You know, just put it on your calendar. And, you know, if something comes up and you don't get it done, move it and put it back on the calendar. Just keep.
that's my to-do list. You know,
Yeah, you're really good at that.
because I know it's going to take some time. So
Mm-hmm.
if I allocate some time to do it, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
It's just as simple as that. And so
That's right.
this makes it happen. It makes it prioritized. If it's something that's
Mhm.
got to be done, then, you know, anyway, so yeah, I mean, that is extremely, again, everyone's different, you know, and I'm not trying to say that the same thing works for everyone, but for me, that's like extremely important.
Yeah, I agree. Finding tools that work for us and our personalities and learning systems and learning styles, I think is really important. And then holding ourselves accountable. Sometimes I think that's the hardest part, is to actually use the tool. And yeah, and that's even harder, I think, right now. You know, just like what you were referring to, kind of going full circle in our conversation, is that everybody's attention span is shorter and everybody's patience is thinner, you know, because we're dealing with so much. There is so much going on. We thought we were busy before, and we were busy, but our minds were occupied in a very different way than they are now. And so it's going to be interesting to see how things unfold in the next several months. And I'm so grateful that we continue to have this space to bring ideas and questions and how it's going, and almost like a monthly check-in accountability group to a writing group, you know, if nothing else, of not necessarily for the content of the writing, but what's working, what's not, you know, who has questions, who needs help with this, how can we connect with one another. So it's really useful.
Well, in the lead up to this, Dana, one of the things that you were asking about is, you know, kind of how do authors stay connected with readers, you know,
Yes.
and find new ways to stay connected with readers, which, you know, is a very important and challenging topic, because it's never easy. But, you know, I've seen several authors who have been doing book launches recently, you know, despite the pandemic and everything else. And even right now is the summertime, which, you know, again, my experience relative to book launches is relatively limited, but in all my other business endeavors, summertime is generally very quiet. It's not a good time to launch anything.
It's not, no.
But here have been a lot of people that have been launching books, and part of it maybe just because it got postponed from earlier in the year. I don't know.
I think that's certainly part of it.
But they're making the most of it, it seems like. You know, they're getting the word about their virtual book launch parties. They're much more open to doing interviews. I know I've been trying to do interviews with anybody who's been launching a book during this period of time, just to get them more awareness. And so I think people are embracing this shift from offline to online more and more, and not, you know, yeah, we can't have a book signing in a bookstore, so let's figure out what we can do.
That's
you know,
right.
Whatever, you know, we can't do a physical book tour. Let's do a virtual book tour.
Right. That's right. Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree. And you've become a really good resource for that too within our Christian writing community. And so I'm really grateful, because gosh, Brian, a year ago when we were thinking about Writing for Your Life conferences, did we ever imagine that, you know, you would have launched the first mega online writing conference this summer, the first of its kind, you know, for 10 days.
10 days. That still kind of slays me, you know, it's like
Incredible.
you know,
But that just goes to show you, like, you know, you did it. You did it. You adapted, like you were talking about earlier, that agility and adaptation.
Well,
It
I
was
think
great.
we all have in our various ways, but I think it's extremely important to serve our audience and, you know, continue to help them however we can, given the challenges that we've got.
I agree. I totally agree. Yes. And that's what it boils down to. And yeah, back to what Sarah said too, is that really thinking about what readers need and how we can help them in this time. You know, even though we do continue to have a lot of financial worries and career worries, and are we going to, you know, publishing worries, and yeah, but the bottom line is always how does our content, how do our words remain useful in such a time as this? And so that's what we're helping figure out with each other. And before I forget, I'm going to put my email address in the chat box. So Patrice, or Sarah, anybody, if you need to reach out. And then all my social media stuff is J. Dana Trent. So and then Facebook author, so that y'all can stay in touch too. If you've got, you know, if there's anything I can do to help connect you with editors, or, you know, anything, just in general, questions, ideas. Yeah, because y'all have certainly, you know, helped me too think about some things tonight. So I'm grateful.
And same thing for me. I mean, I think you all know how to reach me. So, you know, feel free to reach out with questions or, you know, ideas or what have you. I'm constantly trying to figure out how to serve, you know, this audience better. And I don't feel like I've done nearly as much as what I should be doing. So, you know, help me serve you better.
Oh, well, thanks for all you do, Brian. I mean, it's incredible. So I'm grateful.
It's so nice of you guys. Thank you so much, and for providing this. It's just awesome. I just really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Sarah. Well, thanks for being here.
It's always great to see you, Sarah, and people like you that, you know, have been, you know, kind of like tried and true contributors to, you know, all the things we do. I really appreciate that.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you all so much for being here, for taking time out tonight to be together. So, and Brian, we're gonna keep doing this through the fall, correct?
Yeah, no, we'll keep the ball rolling here. You know, I mean, I think that they've been really useful conversations. So, you know, I hope that everyone thinks that.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Yay.
All right. Well, good luck, everyone. And as Dana mentioned, we will be back on the second Tuesday in September. And so if you've got ideas that you'd like to see us discuss, please shoot me an email or, you know, let us know. And hope to see you at some of the conferences. You know, we've got the Children's Book Conference in September, Publishing in Color Conference in October, and Writing for Your Life Conference in November.
I try, yeah. I work full time, so I'm trying to work out. I'm in government contracting, so every time I think I'm going to get time off, it's like, oh, we have two proposals.
All of those are available for months after the conference.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, that was
the Children's Book
cool.
Conference. You know, I'm going to have that available for like 9 months because I want teachers, you know, who are going to be busy school year to be able to take advantage of it. The other conferences, I think, are 3 months. You know, so 3 months after the end of the conference, you can watch any of the recordings, whether they're presentation or Q&A or book discussion or whatever, for 3 months following the conference.
Okay, good to know. Which
is so cool. I mean, who would have ever thought, like, that would be one of the what people are calling a pandemic perk, right? Is that since this conference is virtual and recorded, it lives on.
No, so it's an excellent point, Dana, because all the in-person conferences that I've done, I never record.
No, that's right. You didn't. No.
It's difficult. It's logistically, it's expensive, you know, and so I just, you know, never tried to do it. But all these online, it's like you click a button and it's done, you know, so.
It's great.
It's kind of, you know, fortuitous to your point.
It is. It's awesome. Yeah. So thank you. Thanks for the reminder about the conferences too, Brian. That's exciting.
Can I tell Brian something real quick?
Sure.
Yeah.
Brian, I might try to come to that conference in October if I can. The business conference.
Oh yeah, I didn't mention that one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Okay.
And I'm gonna try another round of Facebook advertising before that, so I'll try to let you know how it goes.
Good, good.
like I'm making progress each time. So
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. I was just on the phone with one of our other author friends earlier today, and we were talking about that very topic. You know, she wants to dive into that too.
Cool.
Mhm. Yeah, it does make a difference. It does. Brian's taught me that. Yeah, it does. Well, thank y'all so much
Thank
and
you all
have
so
a great
much.
night. See y'all
Good
in
evening.
September.
We'll see y'all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good to
Take
see
care.
you.
Take care. Bye.